Hi, I'm Lachlan Berry. I'm a PG at Suffield this year. It is my first year, and Chapel speech. What does it mean to be normal, to be average, to not stand out from your peers for any discernible reason? Normalcy is an interesting concept as it implies that one is neither greater nor lesser than anyone else regarding the trait that they are observing. From the day I entered this world, I would never truly be normal, in any sense of the word. I was almost 2 feet long and weighed over 8 pounds, both measurements above the 99th percentile, a trend that continues to this day. My family quickly moved from Australia to Worcester, Massachusetts, which made me an immigrant, another outlier. I was taught how to read and write before I ever stepped foot in a classroom, further setting me apart from my peers. My parents had met in college while rowing in the Ivy League, so they prioritized the education of my sisters and I above all else. If you haven't figured it out already, I developed quite an ego before I even learned what that word meant. In 2008, we moved to my current town of Longmeadow, Massachusetts, and I spent all summer either playing outside, practicing piano, or learning everything I could understand about medieval history or simple chemistry. However, on my first day of first grade, I quickly realized that there was more than just my height and blended accent that set me apart from others. I was a pretentious child who thought that everyone else around him was stupid because they didn't know their multiplication tables past the ones or twos. I felt that my schoolwork was boring, uninteresting, and downright easy, so I lashed out and became the problem student no teacher ever wants to deal with. And my lack of friends aside from the older boys in my neighborhood reflected this mindset. Everyone my age seemed to already know each other, already understand the complex society of 6 and 7-year-olds that had been forming for half a decade before I even arrived. The ins and outs of simple social interactions that a newcomer like me just didn't quite grasp. For the first time in my life, I was behind on something. It felt almost cathartic to have to struggle and work on my skills for once in my life. For the first time, something didn't come easy to me, and that experience of being an outcast amongst my peers, but being able to seamlessly fit in with the people just 2 years older, planted the seeds of an idea that I've been tossing around for over 10 years now. What would it be like to be truly normal? To have no advantages or disadvantages that were given to you based solely on factors completely out of your control. This longing for a normal life went away for some time, but came back once college athletics became an actual possibility. Surprisingly, I was never really all that good at sports growing up. I would have much rather preferred to go read a book or build some simple machine than go out and practice some game that I didn't even bother to try to understand. It certainly didn't help that I was an awkward, overweight, and uncoordinated child who even at the age of 9 was taller than some of my coaches. However, that all changed once I entered high school. As a freshman, I was the tallest person in the building. I had begun to lose some weight, move a bit faster, and of course get stronger. I started hearing more and more people talk about what I could become and what they would do if they had my body, my gifts, my potential. My friends and teammates would often be frustrated with my performance. They thought that I wasn't trying hard enough, putting in enough effort, or maybe even that I didn't care. I chalked most of it up to simple jealousy or insecurity on their end, but in truth I was the one who was full of envy and I was uncomfortable with myself. Every day I wondered why it had to be me. Why did I have to receive these gifts that quite frankly I wanted nothing to do with? I constantly kept coming back to that idea of being normal. I wish that I could just be the 5'9" guy who was on JV and was just having fun with his friends for a few years before going off to college or the real world. I longed to be able to wake up and not have to listen to everyone around me ask if I had finally gotten better, hit the weight room, or if I was ever going to use the gifts I had been given. The happy little kid who wanted to further his knowledge and abilities was gone, and in his place I stood. I was now someone who longed to be free from the expectations of those around him, to run away from his potential and curl up in a little ball, never to be seen again. It took some time, but I have made peace with who I am and who I can be someday. I've accepted that even if I quit football tomorrow and left school to go live in the woods, I would still stand out, and I'm okay with that.
Hi, my name is Samantha D'Angelo, and I'm a 3-year senior from Long Meadow, Massachusetts. And it feels like I've been waiting to say that for about 9 years now. Wandering down the unknown concrete path at just 9 years old, I had a feeling it would be a moment that I would never forget. Without knowing, it was a glimpse of my future and the path I would be traveling 1,000 more times. I could hardly take in the beauty that I saw before my eyes. My dad and I spent the whole day walking around, reminiscing on his teenage years, and I knew that my sisters had to experience this beauty for themselves. Even though I was aimlessly walking, somehow I was at ease, appreciating everything around me while knowing nothing about where I was. My cheeks were aching from the big smile I was wearing ear to ear that whole day. Looking at the tall brick buildings, I imagined that years later, I would no longer be on the outside looking in. Sometimes it's hard to believe that today, and for the past 3 years, I fulfilled my 9-year-old imaginations as I stand here in the tall brick building I once dreamt about. I loved Suffield Academy even before I knew I was supposed to. Years later, I returned to the same path from the tall brick buildings down to the bell, and I decided to walk it every day for the next 3 years. Sometimes I wish I could go back in time. I wish that I never had to grow up. Over the years, I've realized that getting older means change. It's so hard to leave something that has brought you along a journey of growth. If I could just go back to those days, I never would have known what I'd be missing. Growing up a timid, shy, and reserved child, I was always following the traces of my older sister Mia and taking my younger sister Ava along with me everywhere. Engaging in all the same activities as my sisters, sharing the same teachers, and participating in the same sports created a special bond between us. At the same time, I felt that there wasn't much that made me differ from them. It was the same in my secluded small town. Almost everyone competed in the same sports, dressed the same way, and strived for the same future. Having felt that a path was already paved for me to follow, I rarely jumped out of my comfort zone. When I decided to attend Suffield Academy like my father and sister, I promised myself that for the first time, I would pave my own way. Even though I continued to play the same sports and spent every day with Mia, I still gained the independence and autonomy I had assured myself. Though we all walk the same path each day, the beauty of Suffield is that everyone paves a different route for themselves. Coming together from diverse backgrounds and goals, we spend a crucial time together between our past and our future, supporting each other as we grow in all different directions. When you can, I urge you to look back and reflect on how you built your path. Observe your growth and accomplishments while thinking of people and things that have helped define who you are and where you are headed. Not every day is supposed to be easy, but every day should be a learning experience. All of our paths cross at a place where individuality and compassion are encouraged. No matter how far your path may stray from Suffield, you will always have the walk back from Memorial to the Bell to come back to. As I reflect on the journey that got me to where I am now, I can walk the path from Memorial, past the Art Center, all the way to the Bell, just like I once did absent-mindedly at 9 years old, unaware of how it would change me as a person. Graduation will be the last time I walk this course, but this time I will bring my memories, experiences, and friends that I've made along with me. While I walk closer to the Bell, I begin to foster my confidence, become outgoing, persevering, and ambitious. I will bring the first warm days of spring, seeing my favorite meal on the menu, walking up to dinner on a warm fall night after finishing sports, seeing friends for the first time of the day, squeezing in chairs at the dining hall tables so everyone could eat together, music on Bell Hill, and so many more memories I can't recreate anywhere else. I know that my path was not as perfect as the direct semicircle around the academic quad, and was not as solid as the concrete, but it was my path. Ringing the bell on graduation day will be the end of my childhood and the beginning of the rest of my life. I changed my mind. I am glad I grew up. As my path continues onward, another path at Suffield will have begun. This path will be filled with life and love, and I'm so excited to see how it unfolds. Now it's your turn, Eva. Go pave your own way. Thank you.
My name is Teddy Taylor, and I'm a four-year senior from Palm Beach, Florida. It's my favorite place in the world, Nantucket Sound. I have put so many hours into this special place, sailing here since I was 7 years old. I have a moment of reflection. My skinny second grade self, with bleach blonde hair from the sun, and so excited to get out on the water. Since then, much has changed. In fact, both my perspective on life and sailing have changed immensely. I have learned huge lessons about life and had incredible memories that I will take with me forever. Sailing has become an integral part of my life, a sport and a mindset that has shaped me to my core. As rigorous and demanding as sailing is, it has provided tremendous enjoyment for me while enabling me to develop certain life skills. I really feel like I'm my best self while I'm in the sailing boat. One of the first things my old instructor said to me was the ocean doesn't care. It's really true. People either love sailing or hate it. Unlike other sports, sailing is directly impacted by the natural conditions, demanding that a sailor must be able to quickly respond to factors such as storms and various wind speeds. Whether you are having a good day or bad day, you must finish. If not, you will at best capsize and at worst place yourself in danger. It is under my impression that people think sailing is a fairly easy sport. One just hops in a boat and the boat takes you on a leisurely sail. This visual could not be further from the truth. Sailing can be hard, really hard. Competitive sailing takes it to a whole different level. If you look at a sailor's hands, they are often blistered and calloused. There are moments when the frigid ocean basically paralyzes me, and I wonder how a person can find enjoyment in the sport. You have to deal with major winds sometimes, or even a lack of it, and that is a totally different skill set. There are sometimes big waves for a 4-meter vessel. Often it is cold and sometimes raining, and unlike other sports, sailing is not canceled due to the rain. But then there are times when you cross the finish line in 25-knot wind, and other times where it's so light you feel like you could walk on the water. In sailing, you learn to just deal, and that is basically a sailor's mindset. My favorite thing to do in a boat is called trapping. You balance yourself on the edge of the boat with your feet and lean back at a 90-degree angle, so you're parallel with the water. You have a wire that connects you to a harness, and you do this to keep the boat flat. Early on, I figured out I loved trapping and was good at it, so I became pretty fearless on the wire. My most vivid memory of trapping was at 2019 Nationals. A 25-knot wind speed and 6-foot waves filling me with adrenaline as gallons of water crashed against me, testing my balance. Most of the time, trapping has worked for me. One time, not so much. There was one time when it was super windy and the boat flipped over for me and my partner. If I didn't get my life jacket off immediately, I would have been stuck under the boat and drowned. For this purpose now, I always carry this special knife with me while I sail, just in case the same thing happens. The learn to sail process is rather interesting. My identical twin brother and I were basically thrown into a boat and taught to simply figure it out to some extent. Like many other 7-year-olds, we started sailing in a one-person opti boat. There was an instructor on the water for us for safety reasons, but it was the first time in my life when I was in a boat by myself. you could see how one could develop self-reliance pretty quickly. During this time, I became borderline obsessed with the fantasy of winning a regatta against hundreds of other boats. Yeah, I knew I needed to put effort to perfect the basics. This awareness became a turning point for me in many ways. I could not achieve a goal unless I was willing to go full out and commit to it. By the way, it took me years before I achieved this goal. My partner and I always placed well in regattas, but struggled to place first. My first trio win was at 2019 Nantucket Race Week. This one was extra special because I had much of my friends and family there to support me. I actually thought we would only get second, so I even surpassed my own expectations. Looking back, it's pretty amazing to see the progress I made over the years. I love the feeling of competition in sailing. There really isn't any better feeling in my opinion. When I was 13, I was invited to join the Nantucket race team at my club, which I have been part of since, and it has become a huge part of my life. It has been really incredible to see the experience, and through racing, I learned how important it was to take risks, to say what was in my mind, and to act decisively with making split-second decisions. As I started sailing with a teammate in a 420 boat, I really had underestimated the importance of working with another person and building team chemistry. I first thought that two individually strong sailors could come together and dominate a race course. It did not take me long to realize, however, that other factors, far more complicated than skill level, were involved in good teamship. On my racing team, I'm known for my calm demeanor, and keeping my wits about me in a crisis situation, similar to how you may know me at Suffield. When bad things happen, I tend not to panic, act then and think later. Part of this is my personality, and part of this I perfected through sailing. I'm super excited about the opportunity to sail in college. I'm really thankful for that the skills from being a competent sailor have also translated into other areas of life. Thank you.
Hello. For those of you who do not know me, my name is JT Zapata. I'm a 3-year senior from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There are many things that Suffield has taught me, and I hope I will learn a few more things before I leave in a few short months. But one of the best things that I could come away with was the value of service, the notion of giving back to communities and helping bring up the world when possible. I would like to relate an experience that reinforced what I've been learning about service and its importance to Suffield. My extended family in Pittsburgh worked with their local church on service projects in and around the city through a program called the Pittsburgh Project. While visiting my family, I was able to take part in one of these service weeks, and it proved to be one of the most valuable experiences of my life so far. The goal of the week was to help as many families as possible with projects around their homes. The range of work included yard work, painting, and construction projects. I could go from help laying a new cement sidewalk in front of a house, to mowing the lawn, to painting the house, to building a new wall. The people that we were helping varied as well. Most families had financial trouble or handicapped that hindered them from performing simple tasks. Each group was assigned families to support, and once they had finished their jobs, would move on to the next. Once we had left our work sites, the best feeling was not leaving, but the gratitude you saw in the faces of the people we just helped. The start of the week was pretty quick. The jobs were sizable projects, but easily accomplished by a group of 10 volunteers. Halfway through the week, I was assigned to a home of a veteran in need. He had been deployed twice and lost part of his hand. It made everyday tasks hard, and he needed someone for help. The remainder of the week, my job was to replace appliances, fix a wall, and clean up the yard. As I gathered the tools and supplies that I would need for the day, I felt a bit of excitement to be able to help someone who served our country. When I first got onto the work site, I decided to go introduce myself to the veteran we were about to help. After a brief introduction, he explained to me how happy he was that we were here helping him. He told me that he had been trying to replace the wall in his kitchen all by himself, but it proved too difficult. He ended the conversation with me by making a joke about letting him know if he needed an extra hand. Despite the unfortunate situation this veteran had been tossed into, it was effortless for him to make jokes and to interact with us. I began to clean out some of the clutter and trash around the house to start the work. It's always surprising to see what people manage to hold on to. After the kitchen was cleaned out, I began to work on the wall. The inside of the wall had rotten wood and the insulation was foaming out. I worked carefully to pull out the insulation. Hopefully, it wouldn't touch my arms because the fiberglass and the microscopic cuts that would itch for a week. Ripping out the rotten wood was complicated because of how the nails were placed against the adjacent wall. While part of our group was outside tidying up the grounds, I installed a new layer of insulation, and once that was tucked away, I began to work on the wall. The whole time I was working, I could hear the homeowner humming and singing. I didn't know if it was the fact that he was getting a new wall in a yard, or if he was just happy to have people around. He would always check in on us to see if we needed anything. His attitude and overall kindness made for a fun experience that went by all too fast. During our breaks, he would talk to us about his life experiences. It's always interesting to listen to somebody else's story. At the end of the day, when the work was completed, I said goodbye. The vet was nearly in tears for what we had done, but it wasn't entirely about the work we did. It was about a group of people coming together to help somebody. With so much darkness in this world, it becomes a nice change of pace when people decide to help each other out. Joining a random group of people who all had a common goal proved that great things can be accomplished when we work together for the good of others. Thank you.
The only reason I am the person I am today is because the man I call my hero, my best friend, my coach, my idol, my father. My father came from literally nothing, living in a small one-bedroom apartment with my grandmother and my 2 aunts. Being born in the Dominican Republic to then having to move to the United States, literally knowing nothing about the English language can be one of the most difficult transitions any kid can go through. Imagine having to pick up everything you know to then not only moving to a different state, town, city, but a whole different country that speaks a whole different language. This transition wasn't easy at all, especially having to learn a whole new language, make new friends, and a whole new neighborhood as opposed to being in the country. The only thing that made life somewhat easy for my father was the only thing that he knew from the very beginning, and that was the sport of baseball. Being from it at the time was a third world country. My family had little to no money. My father worked 2 jobs to help out my grandmother financially. Unfortunately, my father didn't have the typical high school student's life. After school, my father worked from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock in a grocery store, and then at 7 o'clock, he would walk over next door to work until 11 o'clock at a laundromat. Eventually, my father had to leave school because his family's financial expenses were a lot more important than his. 2 years later, my dad was lucky enough to get a construction worker's job in the union. He's been working with this company for over 30 years. Over those course of 30 years, my father has managed to do a lot. He's moved my family from the hood of New York to a small suburban town in New Jersey called Secaucus. My father has given me absolutely everything I have in life, taught me and everything I know, and made me the person I am today. I aspire to be half the man my father is one day.
Good morning. My name is Davis Warren, and I'm a first-year senior from Manhattan Beach, California. So I have a poem I'm going to read from Chief Tecumseh, the Shawnee warrior who tried to unite the Native American tribes in the Ohio River Valley as a last resort against westward expansion of the Americans. He was well known by U.S. military forces for his wisdom and bravery. He staged some of the most successful Native American attacks on U.S. troops. I first heard this poem at one of my favorite places in the world, Camp Tecumseh. Camp Tecumseh has changed my life, and I think in some ways saved it. I've had a pretty crazy journey that led me here to Suffield, and this poem acted as a steadying force. It kept me in line when I needed it. For a time, it was the lock screen on my phone. Now, a copy of it sits in the corner of my bathroom mirror. In the poem, Chief Tecumseh is telling us that at some point in your life, you must face your fear of not being enough. You must risk failure. And he's right. None of us get out of this life alive. So be valiant, be gracious, be great, and be grateful for the opportunities you have. We don't know where we might end up or when it might end. So here's the quote. So live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Trouble no one about their religion. Respect others in their view and demand that they respect yours. Love your life. Perfect your life. Beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. Prepare a noble death song for the day when you go over the great divide. Always give a word or a sign of salute when meeting or passing a friend, even a stranger when in a lonely place. Show respect to all people and grovel at none. When you arise in the morning, give thanks for the food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason for giving thanks, the fault lies only in yourself. Abuse no one and no thing, for abuse turns the wise ones to fools and robs the spirit of its vision. When it comes your time to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with the fear of death, so that when their time comes, they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home. Chief Tecumseh. Thank you.
Hello, Suffield. My name is Kayshawn Bennett. I am a four-year senior from Windsor, Connecticut. Today I'll be doing a speech on maturity. Maturity is something that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and for some people, their whole lives. For me, it took quite some time to mature, and to be honest, I believe I still have some maturing to do. Maturing is a never-ending process with lots of positive and negative moments. Since I was little, whenever I started a new school, people always expected me to be more mature than other kids, especially from as early as elementary. It felt like watchful eyes have always been on me because of how big I am. I feel in general people expect kids who are big for their age to mature faster because they look older, but that is really correct. In my case, I have always been the youngest or one of the youngest in my class. If I ever did something absurd like laughing obnoxiously out loud in class or making random noises, I was only acting my age. As I got older, I began to realize since I am big, I need to control how I act and what I say because it seemed like people were less lenient with me. Eventually, I got better at controlling myself a little more and realized I couldn't always do what my peers did. For example, I couldn't do a quirky dance in class because it wouldn't be viewed as funny but more as a foolish act. This stopped me from being a follower and helped me to become a leader. Suffield was where I started to seriously focus on maturing. Certain teachers and close friends helped me with my most challenging characteristic, my temper. I can be a hothead. There were multiple situations where I wanted to blow up, especially if a peer said things that did not sit well with me. The school environment was completely different from what I was used to. A close-knit community, which seemed like the kids and adults were less cultured, mostly white, and had more money than my family and others I knew. One of my first interactions with another student casually making the stereotypical remarks, "Don't all black people like watermelons, and can I say the N-word?" My initial reaction was wanting to lose my temper. However, I kept my cool. This, I believe, was the defining moment I began to think about my actions to others, rather than reacting without thinking, doing something that could have gotten me in trouble. The road to controlling my actions has not been easy. There have been situations where I acted immature and faced the consequences. However, I do believe that I learned from every situation and have gotten more mindful with taking time to think about my reactions to things that don't sit well with me. For example, I have been in disagreement with teachers where a simple okay would have de-escalated the situation. But when that wasn't the case and I had to get my point across, it only led me to digging myself into a hole and face to face with negative consequences. After I would think to myself, was that really worth something getting in trouble for? So when I find myself in similar situations, I now try not to argue. I try not to argue because it only leads to something worse. Plus, it is just an unnecessary waste of energy when arguing. I had to learn how to ignore a lot of negativity and learn what and how to say things when I was angry. Me being able to control my temper made it easier for me to mature. There are times where I still have my hiccups here and there, but I can honestly say I have come a long way. What also helped me mature was the people who I had in my corner, like Mr. Can, Coach Gamir, my friends, and Miss Cook. My friends and Miss Cook know what type of person I am and understood me more than anyone on campus. They would tell me what I was doing wrong and may have seemed negative, but I knew it was with the positive intentions. I respect them for being blatantly honest with me because I know they didn't want to see any bad happen to me. Mr. Can and Coach Gamir were also two important people who helped me throughout the years in Suffield. I know I drove them crazy, but they never gave up hope and worked with me because they saw the potential, which is me becoming a respectable man in the future. Lastly, I would like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Warren, who I butted heads with a few times, but they always kept a good heart and tried to keep me in the right direction. Thank you.